JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is one of my very favorite anime and manga. And of course, its most iconic piece are the stands, psychic manifestations of a user's spirit, each with an entirely unique ability. A stand can be or do almost anything, ranging from a sword-fighting knight in shining armor to a small Lego White House that increases local air pressure until the people around it explode. For example. But in the main series, stands are pretty much just used for battle. We very rarely see them in a normal day-to-day context. So I wondered, which stands would be most useful in my daily life? So I spent the last few days reading through 155 wiki articles to try to figure out which ones would be most useful and organize them into some nice simple categories. Now before I leap into it, here's some ground rules on what I'm including in my 155 unique stands. I'll only be covering stands from the main series, no spin-offs or light novels or anything like that. That does mean that I will be including parts 6 through 8, but I'll avoid spoiling any major plot details in case you've only watched the anime. I'll just be explaining some of the stands if they come up. And I'll only be covering stands that are actually named and explained in the story. For stands like Holly's stand, we just don't have enough information about them for me to really make any sort of decision. So what do I consider a unique stand? Because some stands are just different versions of other stands. Here are the rules that I use to simplify things down. If a stand has multiple acts, like echoes or tusk, it's typically shown being able to switch back and forth between these different acts. So I counted all of the acts together as one stand. But if a stand has multiple entirely distinct evolutions, like the Requiems in Part 5, Sea Moon and Made in Heaven in Part 6, or Love Train in Part 7, I counted those as separate, distinct stands. And finally, if a stand reappears in Parts 7 and 8 in multiple universes, I still counted those as the same stand because their powers are shown being pretty much the same. So with that, let's get started with our first tier. Our first set of stands are ones that are not applicable, that they just couldn't really apply to me because I'm one human person. Foo Fighters is the stand of a sentient colony of plankton that gives them human intelligence and allows them to work together as a group. I am not a colony of plankton, as far as you know, so I couldn't really have this stand. Tattoo You is a stand shared by 11 men who are able to warp in and out of each other's bodies through their tattoos. I do not have 10 other friends to share this one with. Sugar Mountain is a tree, and this one I'm afraid to say because it's French, and in my Evangelion video I said a few words that were from German, and I said them very wrong, so I'm not gonna say this. This is the leaves. This is kind of the worst category, so I just wanted to get it out of the way. Our next category is called Please No. These are stands that would actively make my life significantly worse. The issue that all of these stands have is that the user seemingly can't control them, like turn them off, and that they are just always inconveniencing you, whether you like it or not. Anubis is a cursed sword that might brainwash me into killing my friends, so that's obviously a no-go. Superfly traps the user inside a transmission tower until they find somebody to take their place. Cheap Trick hangs out on your back, and if anybody sees it on your back, it will kill you. Milagro Man seems cool at first, it creates a lot of money for the user. But it will keep creating the money until you are literally drowning in it. Also, you can't spend the money. Sea Moon makes the user the center of gravity for everything within 3 kilometers. I don't think I really have to explain why that would not be super convenient. Made in Heaven speeds up time until the universe repeats itself. This one gives me a headache to think about, but it would definitely not be very helpful. Survivor makes everybody in a given area really aggressive and causes them to all kill each other. That one's not great. Green Grass of Home causes anybody who approaches the user to shrink down really small the closer that they get. I don't want that. I want people to be able to get close to me. I'm extremely lonely. Our next category is the largest one, including 47 stands. Anything in this category is pretty much only useful for hurting people or breaking things. These stands are really only useful in self-defense scenarios, which are pretty rare for me, or if you're willing to be a bad person. So this category is called For Bad Boys Only. The next level up includes stands whose abilities are still not super helpful to me. They're either powers that are entirely useless or that are harmful to people, like the last category. But the difference here is that these stands are shown having enough of a physical form that if I was sitting at my kitchen counter and I was kind of hungry, but I didn't really feel like getting up, I could have these stands make me a sandwich. For example, do I need a stand that can turn anything it touches into a bouncy, rubbery substance? Not really. I don't really know what I would do with that. But if I drop my phone behind my bed, I know that Spice Girl could help me out. Finally, I get to a tier where I'd actually be using the abilities that the stands have, but not very often. They would not really change my life very much. So this category is called, I guess? Some of these stands have really specific abilities that I just wouldn't be using very often, like Strength, which can turn a shitty small boat into a cooler, bigger boat. I'd probably use that at some point, but not very much. But some of these stands have a broad range of abilities, things like Gold Experience or Stone Free. I just don't really know when I would be using these. Situations would probably come up, but nothing immediately springs to mind in my daily life that would be super helpful. So again, I'm not going to go through all of these specifically. But I will go through a few of my favorites. If I ever need a car I'm driving to drive up the side of a mountain, Wheel of Fortune can help me out. And then right underneath it, we have Sun and Horus, which kind of have opposite abilities. The Sun will heat up an area, Horus will cool down an area. These are typically used to heat or cool them to deadly levels, but if I only turn them on for a bit, I could probably save a lot of money on heating and cooling. In its completed form, Scary Monsters allows the user to turn into a dinosaur. I just think that would be pretty awesome. And the last one in this tier that I'm going to mention is Doggy Style. It turns the user into ropes or something, but it's called Doggy Style, and I have the sense of humor of a 13-year-old, so that would actually be a pretty cool one to have. And now we're in the second to last tier, finally hitting some stands that are actually pretty cool. These stands have broad enough uses that I can see myself actually applying them at least a few times a week. Star Platinum and the World allow the user to stop time around them for a couple seconds, which would be useful anytime I drop something, which is a lot. Yellow Temperance and Kanoom both allow the user to transform their face into someone else's as a disguise. This is useful if you're trying to convince somebody that you're older than you are, or if you see somebody you know that you really do not want to talk to. Just switch your face to somebody else's and walk right past them. Justice and Tenor Sax both allow the user to create large-scale illusions. I don't really know what I would use this for necessarily, but it has so much potential that I'm really only limited by my creativity. Echoes can do like a million different things by putting words or onomatopoeia on objects or people. In part 4, it's used to cause a gust of wind, to make an item hot or bouncy. It's really only limited by your understanding of Japanese onomatopoeia. Echoes can also cause a gentle suggestion on another person, like when Koichi writes "believe in me" on his mom, causing her to sort of hear that thought from inside her. Pearl Jam allows the user to create delicious food with incredible restorative and curative abilities. I would never be sick again, and I would actually know how to cook. Octoon Baby can make the user and any objects around them invisible. Unfortunately, we don't really know how well this power works because the user is a baby. But being invisible would be pretty cool, probably for a lot of the same reasons that Yellow Temperance and Kanoom would. Cinderella allows the user to change somebody's appearance, improving their fortune and love life. Now, it's not really clear if Aya can use Cinderella on herself, but if she can, I could be so much hotter. But even if it only works on other people, that is such a good business model. I could make so much money from that. Earth, Wind, and Fire allows the user to transform into any simple object. The almost 6-foot tower of books and Lego boxes that I set my phone on to record, predictably, fell over. Probably should have seen that one coming, but I have since invested in a tripod. Anyways, Soft Machine can deflate any object like it were a balloon. I think that would just make it a lot easier to carry big things places. I changed my mind about Little Feet. It's actually going in the next tier up, so I'm gonna erase that one for now. Metallica is able to form any metal into a different shape. It's able to make objects at least as complex as a scissors, though it may be possible to do even more. There's so much potential here. Any metal object I needed, I could create from other metal. Weather Report can change and control the weather in an area, so it's kind of just a better version of Sun and Horus, which would heat or cool down an area. Mandem can reverse time around the user by exactly 6 seconds. Anybody who experiences this will remember the lost 6 seconds, but it'll change the position of any people or objects. This might be useful if, for example, my phone fell 5.5 feet off a makeshift tripod. Soft and Wet sends bubbles that can remove something from something else. That's admittedly a very vague description because it can do like a zillion different things. On top of moving around all sorts of objects and people, Soft and Wet's bubbles can also envelop smells and sounds and move those to other places, can take away the friction from a floor or temporarily remove a person's sight. It kind of can just do anything that works for the plot. So if you've got the creativity to make Soft and Wet work, you definitely can. And finally, we have Paisley Park, which has a huge amount of control over technology and can gather all sorts of information for the user. We're here, the highest tier, the ones that I need so fucking badly. These would change my life. Up first, we have the Fool and the High Priestess. The Fool is made of sand, but can turn into pretty much any sort of object, including a person. Iggy uses it to imitate Dio at one point. And the High Priestess can create any sort of object out of stone or metal, including something as complicated as a harpoon gun. Thoth is a book that can predict the future. I don't think I have to explain why that one's awesome. Atum's main ability is to steal people's souls. I'm not super enthusiastic about that one, but it has another power, which is that if you ask somebody a yes or no question, using Atum, you will be able to tell what the true answer that they're thinking is. Crazy Diamond can heal or repair anything, and like I've mentioned, I break a lot of things. Heaven's Door can be used on people or objects to open them up like a book, read all sorts of things about them, and through writing you can convince them to do things, erase memories, things like that. A lot of that's obviously pretty immoral, but with somebody's approval, I would make a fantastic therapist. Enigma can hide any object inside a piece of paper, and Space Trucking is basically the same thing but with a deck of cards, meaning I could carry around anything I wanted with only a deck of cards or a small notebook. Little Feet can shrink down objects or people, meaning that it's useful not only for moving and storing things like the two above it, but that it can also make the user smaller. Being tiny just sounds kind of fun. And finally, the moment you've all been waiting for. Out of 155 stands, the one that I would want the most is Heya. Heya is a small stand that sits on the user's shoulder and whispers encouraging things in their ear. That's all it does, but I could really use that one sometimes. Thank you so much for watching my video. It was so much fun to make. I've realized that as much as I love them, video essays are boring. So I'll probably be doing more stuff like this in the future. So if you want to see that, feel free to subscribe, and also follow me on TikTok if you'd like. You're morally obligated to give the video a thumbs up because I put a new nail hole in my wall to get the whiteboard at the proper height. So if you don't like the video, you kind of look like an asshole. But anyway, thank you for watching and have a fantastic day.